It's Miss Shaw.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mr. Burkle.
My name is Miss Bailey.
Hello, everybody. My name is Miss Middlebrook, but you guys can call me Miss M.
Hi, second graders. My name is Miss Hickman, and I am so excited to be your summer reading teacher.
Hey guys, it's me, Miss Nieves. Thank you for joining me today.
Hi, second graders. My name is Miss Hickman, and I'm going to be your reading teacher for the summer. I am so excited to review all of these reading skills so you guys can get ready for third grade. One thing you should know about Miss Hickman is that I love teaching. I've wanted to be a teacher ever since I was in kindergarten. What do you want to be when you grow up? I hope some of you guys want to be teachers too. That is so awesome. So today we're focusing on recounting stories. We're going to learn how to recount a story correctly. We're going to read a story and you're going to help me recount it. And then it's going to be your turn. You're going to go in your work packet and recount a story all by yourself. Sounds like a plan? Awesome. All right, give me a thumbs up if you're ready to learn. Perfect. Let's talk about recounting stories. When you recount a story, you retell the important events in that story. Well, what's an event? An event is something that happens in the story. The key word here is important. You only want to share the important events of the story. Your recounting should not take you a whole hour to do. It should take all of a couple minutes. Well, how's it only going to take a couple minutes? You're only sharing those important parts. When you're reading a story, some events are interesting and some events are important. How can you tell the difference? You're going to find an event that you think is important and take it out of the story. If you can retell the story without that event, then it's not important. Important events have to be included in the story to make sense. So, find an event, take it out of the story. If your story doesn't make sense, then it's important. This is one reason why Miss Hickman loves recounting stories. This is just so cool to me. When you recount a story, a person that has never read the story will be able to understand what the story is about. So you can go up to a stranger, you can tell a baby, you can tell a kindergartner, a teacher, your parents, you can tell anybody that's never read the story before, and they'll be able to understand what the story is about. That's so cool. And hey, maybe you've enticed them and intrigued them to read the story themselves. The only way this is going to happen is if you recount the story correctly. So let's learn how to do that. Have you ever been next to somebody and they're trying to tell you a story, but they're all over the place? They're like, oh, this happened. And then wait, but at the beginning, this happened. It was crazy. And then in the middle, this happened. And then wait. Oh, I forgot this. At the beginning, this happened again. And you're just like, what? This happened to Miss Hickman all the time last year for some reason. My students love to tell me who wasn't listening at specials, who was talking at lunch. Does that sound like you and your class? The problem when Miss Hickman's class recounted the story to her was that they didn't tell it in order. They were all over the place and it left Miss Hickman so confused. So when you're recounting a story, you have to retell the events in order. You have to tell me what's happening at the beginning, then the middle, and then at last the end. Tell the events in order. Everything else on this page, you want to include when you're recounting the story so the person that's listening or reading your recounting can really understand what the story is about. So first detail you want to include are the characters. Who is the story, or what is the story mostly about? When you're reading a story, you might have one character or you might have a bunch of characters. You only want to focus on the main characters when you're recounting a story. So you want to ask yourself, is this character who the story is mostly about? If it's not, then it's probably not a main character. Next thing we want to include is the setting. Where is your story taking place? Is it taking place on a beautiful beach or a dining room like Miss Hickman's video? When you're sharing the setting, you want to be as specific as possible. You don't want to say, oh, well, the story happened outside. Well, outside where? Outside in outer space? Outside in a parking lot? Outside in the grass? Be specific. Oh, my story's taking place on a sandy beach on an island. See how different that is? So once you find your characters and your setting, that's when you're going to find your problem right after that. When you hear the word problem, sometimes our mind goes to something bad or sad or scary, but your problem is not always going to be a bad problem. Sometimes the problem's going to be good. Those are the best problems to have, right? So picture this. A character made a bunch of chocolate chip cookies, and he wants to share the chocolate chip cookies with all of his friends. But his friends can't eat the chocolate chip cookies because they're so stuffed. They just had a giant piece of pizza. That's an awesome problem to have. I want to have that problem right now. So you can have a good problem or a bad problem. In the middle of your story, this is where your characters are going to try to do certain things to solve their problem. Sometimes their problem will be solved just like that. Sometimes your character will have to try things over and over and over to solve their problem. This is called the action of the story. If the story has a problem, then there is some kind of solution, which brings us to the end of our story. That's where you'll find the solution, how the character solves the problem. This can be if the character solves the problem, but it can also be that the character learns a lesson. Sometimes the solution is not something that we always expect. So think about if you're reading your story and you don't see the solution, think about what the character learns as a lesson from the story. All right, so these are all the details that we have to include to recount our story successfully. So let's try one. Okay, Miss Hickman is going to read you this story, and then we're going to work to recount it together. Sound like a plan? Okay. This story is called The Day Miss Hickman Was Late for School. Dun, dun, dun. This is not a non-fictional story. However, some events are based on true things. So I'm going to let you figure out which part of this story is true. Okay, so here we go. The sun was shining through the window. Outside, the screeching of brakes woke up Miss Hickman. Oh no, what time is it? She said as she jumped out of bed. She knew it was later than usual, but for some reason, her alarm didn't go off. I'm going to be late for school, she said as she ran to the closet to get dressed. She quickly put on her clothes, brushed her teeth, and messily did her hair. She moved as fast as she could to her car. When she started the car, she finally noticed the time. 7:50! Miss Hickman had to be to work at 8 o'clock. I'm so late, Miss Hickman said all the way to school. She pulled up to the school at 8:01 and stopped the car. The parking lot was empty. That's why my alarm didn't go off, she laughed. It's Saturday. Oh my gosh, this story is so funny. So the good news is Miss Hickman wasn't late at all because it's Saturday. Oh, wow, that was a crazy story. All right, so let's try to recount it together, okay? So when we're recounting a story, we have to find all those important details. First thing we want to find are the characters. So who is the story mostly about? Miss Hickman, that's right. This whole story is about Miss Hickman. So she's the main character. After we find the characters, what do we need to find? Starts with an S, do you know? The setting. Where is this story taking place? So remember, we want to be as specific as possible. All right, well, at the beginning of the story, it says that she jumped out of bed. Now, specific. So where is there usually a bed? In a bedroom. Okay, so we know Miss Hickman is in her bedroom. And where is there usually a bedroom? In a house, in an apartment. So Miss Hickman is in her bed, in her bedroom, in her house. Does Miss Hickman stay in her bed the entire story? Yes or no? 1 for yes, 2 for no. Does Miss Hickman stay in her bed the entire story? I should see some 2s out there. No, she does not. Her setting changes. So after she gets out of bed, where is the next place that she goes? Her car. So now we have moved the setting to the car. Is the car the last place Miss Hickman is for the rest of the story? Yes or no? I should see no again. No. At the end of her story, Miss Hickman ends up at the parking lot at her school. So we have 3 different settings in this story. Okay, so we have the characters, we have the setting. What's next? The problem. What is the problem in this story? Well, Miss Hickman's going to be late for school. Her alarm didn't go off, and now she's going to be late for school. That's a really big problem. That's a problem that nobody wants to have, right? It's not fun being late for school. So, how does Miss Hickman try to solve her problem? Now we're looking for the solution. Well, we're going to keep reading till we get to the end, right? So let's read it again. The solution is that it's Saturday. So she didn't really solve her problem, but it was Saturday. That's how the story ends. So she actually wasn't late for school because it was Saturday. There is no school on Saturday. All right, we have all of the details. So now we want to find some important events that happen at the beginning, the middle, and the end. So remember, it has to be something that our story will not make sense if we take it out, okay? So at the beginning of our story, I know the really important part is that she's late for school. Miss Hickman's alarm doesn't go off, which causes her to be late for school. She wakes up late. Okay, so we have our important events at the beginning. Miss Hickman wakes up late. Her alarm didn't go off. She's going to be late for school. What happens in the middle that's important? Miss Hickman gets in her car and she drives to the school. The fact that she's putting on her clothes really quickly and brushing her teeth, those are all interesting details, but they're not important to the story. So she gets in her car. She realizes that the time is 7:50 and she only has 10 minutes to get to school. So when she finally gets to school, at the end, she gets to her school and the parking lot is empty because it's Saturday. Okay, so we have all the important events. We have the characters, the setting, the problem. We have the solution. We're ready to recount this story. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. I want you to pretend like you've never read this story before, and Miss Hickman is going to recount it to you, okay? And then you're going to see how I did, okay? All right. Action. Oh, hey, I just read this really, really funny story about Miss Hickman being late for school. Can I recount it to you? Yeah? Okay, awesome. So there's this teacher, Miss Hickman, and she woke up late for school because her alarm didn't go off. So she's gonna be late for school. She gets in her car and she realizes that she only has 10 minutes to get to school. So she drives to the school, and when she gets there, this is crazy. The parking lot is empty. She realizes that it's Saturday. Oh my gosh, isn't that so funny? Okay, how did I do? Good? Awesome. I couldn't have done it without you. Thank you so much for helping me recount that story. Okay, it's your turn. You're going to get your reading packets and get a pencil. You're going to read Stone Soup in your packet. It's on page 6 and 7. After you're done reading it, you're going to recount the story, and you're going to answer the questions on page 8 and 9. When you're reading, you can read it to somebody or read it by yourself. But when you're reading it, try to make notes like Miss Hickman. When I have a story or an article in front of me, I always want to make notes so that when I get to the questions, I can answer them right away. So see if you can circle the character in Stone Soup. See if you can find the setting, the problem, the solution. It's going to help you answer those questions really quickly. And also, it's going to get you ready for 3rd grade. So, Go to a quiet place, focus, and we're going to go over the answers to these questions next video. All right, happy working. Hi, second graders. It's me, Miss Hickman, your second grade reading teacher for this summer. So before we start working, I have a little trivia question for you. So Miss Hickman was born and raised in Massachusetts. I know, right? It's kind of like a tongue twister. My question to you is, can you spell Massachusetts? All right, while you're thinking about how to spell Massachusetts, I'm going to give you a few seconds to think about it. I want you to go ahead and get your work packets. You were supposed to read Stone Soup and answer those questions from last video, so we're going to go ahead and grade them today. Get your packets and something to grade your work. Okay, so you had a few seconds. Do you think you know how to spell it? All right, go ahead. Okay, I'm going to spell it. Let's see if you got it right. Massachussetts. Did you spell it right? It took me a really long time to learn that, but my teachers made sure I knew how to spell Massachusetts. Now you guys do too. Okay, so I hope everybody has their work packets, something to go over your work with. And let's get started. Today, we're going to go over the answers to Stone Soup. We are going to review how to recount a story. I know you guys are well on your way to being experts at recounting stories. We're going to read a story in your work packet. We're going to go over the answers together, and then you guessed it, it's going to be your turn again. You're going to read another story and recount it all by yourself. Sounds like a plan? Awesome. Okay, let's get started. So in Stone Soup, go ahead to your questions. The first answer, which should be on the blank, is hungry and food. A traveler was feeling hungry, so he stopped and asked for food. Those are the answers that you needed there. Okay, the next answer is the villagers only had enough food for themselves. That's why none of the villagers could give the traveler any food. How did you do with those two? These are the important events that happen at the beginning of the story. Okay, now let's go to the middle. Okay, in the middle of the story, the traveler came up with the idea to make stone soup. He asked for a pot and water. Then he added stones from his pocket. Now, your answer does not have to be word for word like Miss Hickman's, but as long as you have something that the traveler had the idea for stone soup, that he got a pot, that he put stones in it, that is perfect. The next important event that happened in the middle of the story is what the villagers brought. They brought water and food for the soup. Now, they brought 6 food items. Now, this part you needed to have word for word, these 6 food items. You should have had that the villagers brought onions, potatoes, carrots, peas, beans, and corn. Those were the 6 items that the villagers brought to add to this delicious stone soup. Let's go to the end of the story. So what ends up happening at the end of the story is that the traveler makes the villagers think he is cooking something really good with the stones. He kind of tricked them, right? And this makes the villagers want to help make the soup. So remember, they kept adding and adding and adding and adding, kind of waiting to see what was going to happen. And in the end, the traveler not only made soup for himself, but he also made soup for the entire village. So no one in the village was hungry. So how did you do? I hope you had a lot of right answers there. Okay, so let's move on. We're going to review how we should be recounting a story. Remember, when you're recounting a story, you are retelling the important parts of the story. You want to tell the important events that happen at the beginning, the middle, and then the end. We have to tell our story in order. We also want to include some of these details at the bottom to make sure that the person who's listening or reading or recounting fully understands what's going on. So we also want to include, when we're recounting a story, characters, setting, problem, and solution. Couple of things to remember. After you find the characters in the setting, that's when you're going to see your problem. In the middle of the story, that's when you're going to read about how your character tries to solve their problem. It's called, does anyone remember? The action of the story. If the story has a problem, there's definitely a solution, and that's going to be at the end of our story. When you're looking for the solution, you want to figure out how the character solves the problem or what the character learns. Okay, so that is everything that we need to know to recount a story. So let's go ahead and try one together. So we are going to read The Wolves in Sheep's Clothing on page 10 and 11 in your work packets. I'm going to read it with you. We're going to have 5 minutes to read it. As you're reading, make notes. If you see the main character, circle it. If you see the problem or the setting or the solution, make a note so that when we get to the questions, we can answer them very quickly. All right, so everyone should have their work packet. Miss Hickman has hers right on the table. We have 5 minutes on the clock, and let's get reading. Okay, so the time is halfway through. You should at least be halfway through your story right now. So let's keep reading. So we're getting close to a minute left of the story. You should be close to the end. If you're a quick reader and you're already done, see if you can find the main character, the setting, the problem, the solution. Okay, so time is up. Wow, that story did not go how I expected it to. That was a crazy ending, huh? Okay, so let's do some questions together. We're going to recount some of this story. At the beginning of the story, let's think about those important events. Ms. Hickman already did it for you. At the beginning of the story, there was a wolf that wanted to eat a sheep very badly. That's important. Every time the wolf tried, the shepherd would see him and chase him away. That's important too. The wolf wanted a sheep. The shepherd always chased him away. And lastly, at the beginning, that's where the wolf finds the sheep's fleece. All of these things are very, very important to this story. Okay, so we're going to try the middle together. So let's think about the important events that happen in the middle of the story. We know it has to do with the wolf because the wolf is our main character. Okay, so at the beginning, the last thing that happens at the beginning is that the wolf finds a sheep's fleece. What does the wolf do with that fleece? Okay, well, I know the wolf puts on the fleece. He goes in with the sheep. He disguises himself as a sheep. And then what happens? He doesn't get caught by the shepherd. And what else? Oh, he waits till nighttime and then he takes a sheep for his dinner. Yeah, that's everything that happens in the middle. So let's kind of put that all into a paragraph. The wolf dressed in fleece and walked among the sheep, but the shepherd didn't chase him away. At night, the wolf carried off a sheep for his dinner. That's all the important events that happen in the middle. Perfect. Thank you so much for your help. Now it's your turn. Complete the end box on page 13, and you're going to answer the questions on page 13 and 14. When you're done, see how you did. Check your work. The answers are on page 57 and 58. I know you guys are going to do a wonderful job with recounting stories. Happy working!